What's an ideal microphone look like? And what would, if you could select the perfect microphone for your studio, what does it look like? But the reality is, ever since, COVID happened and everyone started going to remote work, all of the webcam manufacturers and the microphone manufacturers, everyone stepped up their game. So anything that you've purchased in the last 3 or 4 years, it almost doesn't matter. They're going to be good enough to do the work that we're trying to do here with the podcast. And so that's a really good point to bring up. I mean, we talked about this, all the way back in one of our first episodes on the 10 Commandments of Podcasting, is that you're looking for good enough production quality. We're not looking for Hollywood, right? We're not looking for a $5,000 Sennheiser mic or something like that with a boom arm and all the fancy stuff that you have to have a particular audio operator for. We're looking for, in this case, something that's push button simple, that's good enough to get your message across, without the audio messing up that message, right? Because if you show up in the marketplace and your YouTube video or your TikTok video or your YouTube short or your Facebook post, the audio on it is garbled or messed up or unintelligible or just sounds low quality, the people who are listening to it are going to assume that everything else in your business is the same way. So all we're looking for is a microphone that's just good enough to do what you want to do with it, which is produce the content. Welcome to PvP.fm, brought to you by Push Button Podcasts, your go-to resource for grabbing attention, building awareness, and creating authority in your marketplace. I'm Richard Matthews, your host and guide through the wonderful world of podcasting as a driver of business. Here, we teach how to use a multimedia podcast as the cornerstone of your omnipresent content marketing strategy. Whether you're an entrepreneur, podcaster, expert, or thought leader, you'll discover creative ways to leverage your digital content. From blogs to video, from YouTube to TikTok, and everything in between. I'll show you how to stand out from the noise so you can directly connect with potential customers, build strategic partnerships, and drive leads into your business. Get ready for actionable tips and tangible takeaways on improving your digital presence across the board. With that, let's dive into this week's episode of PvP.fm.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the PvP Push Button Podcast. Today, I am here with Richard Matthews, and we're going to be talking about why audio is very important in podcasting. So I guess we'll first off start with, what do you need to have good audio?
Yeah, so this is one of the questions we get asked a lot. And, as a podcasting firm, you'd expect to get asked about the microphones, but, it's a frequently asked question for us. What kind of microphone do I need to record my podcast? And it's a good question. It's a smart question. It's definitely something that people should be asking about. And so we're going to talk a little bit about today why you need a microphone, what kind of microphones you should be looking at, and how it impacts just your production work and how it's going to impact your audience's view of you in the marketplace with your microphone. So yeah, there's a lot of things to cover with microphone. You can hear, I've got a nice microphone here in front of me. We'll talk a little bit about this one, and you have one as well, Brandy, and we'll talk a little bit about why we have the microphones we do and what you need in order to set up your podcast studio.
I will say in advance to our viewers that my microphone is a $40 microphone off of Amazon. I just got very lucky that it's a good microphone. I didn't do too much research into it because I actually bought this before I was doing any of the podcasting stuff. And it just happens to be a good microphone and worked out well and saved us a little bit of money going forward.
That's actually
it is
a
important
really
to have a
good
good one.
point. It's a really good point, though, that we're going to talk about ideals on this podcast, right? What's an ideal microphone look like? And what would, if you could select the perfect microphone for your studio, what does it look like? But the reality is, ever since, COVID happened and everyone started going to remote work, all of the webcam manufacturers and the microphone manufacturers, everyone stepped up their game. So anything that you've purchased in the last 3 or 4 years, it almost doesn't matter. They're going to be good enough to do the work that we're trying to do here with the podcast. And so that's a really good point to bring up. I mean, we talked about this, all the way back in one of our first episodes on the 10 Commandments of Podcasting, is that you're looking for good enough production quality. We're not looking for Hollywood, right? We're not looking for a $5,000 Sennheiser mic or something like that with a boom arm and all the fancy stuff that you have to have a particular audio operator for. We're looking for, in this case, something that's push button simple, that's good enough to get your message across, without the audio messing up that message, right? Because if you show up in the marketplace and your YouTube video or your TikTok video or your YouTube short or your Facebook post, the audio on it is garbled or messed up or unintelligible or just sounds low quality, the people who are listening to it are going to assume that everything else in your business is the same way. So all we're looking for is a microphone that's just good enough to do what you want to do with it, which is produce the content. Does that make sense?
That makes sense to me. Yeah. And like you said, a lot of places stepped up their game a lot during quarantine. So that's really nice because everyone was getting into remote work or doing their own little side projects. But, you kind of touched on why it's important to have a good microphone and good audio. And yeah, as someone who religiously watches YouTube, it's hard to get through a video with poor audio quality. It's just kind of unpleasant to listen to.
Yeah. So as someone like, cause you are the quintessential social media generation, right? So for you guys, what do you see as being like a major turnoff in the audio world? If you are watching a video or you're selecting a business to work with and you see their video, what's the kind of thing that's going to immediately turn you off in relation to their audio?
This is gonna take more explaining, but for a very brief thing, if the audio sounds crunchy, and what I mean by that is it's like the mic peaks very easily, which means you're just kinda hitting the top range of volume that mic can handle, and it just kinda sounds fried. And to me, that's kind of a turnoff because it kind of sounds like you're recording on an Xbox headset instead of, an actual microphone. And I have seen that in older stuff when I was training for other jobs and their videos they'd show us. It makes it very difficult to pay attention because whether it's true or not, it just subconsciously makes you kind of feel like that person isn't qualified to be talking about something important.
Yeah, it's an interesting subconscious thing that happens, and it happens with
Mhm,
your video too, right? So with the video
mhm.
quality or the audio quality, I call them subconscious trust signals, right? Or
Yes.
unconscious trust signals. And it's the trust signals you're putting into the marketplace that are going to influence the way that the marketplace views everything you do, right? You might be the best goddamn lawyer on the planet or the best pest control person in your neighborhood, right? But if someone you're trying to put a content piece into the marketplace and they can't understand your audio, your audio is garbled or it sounds low quality, the assumption is that your whole business is low quality.
I think it's a little bit of a off tangent, but I think a big part of that is just its first impressions. I mean, and another thought is, well, if you can't even manage to get good recording equipment, how is your business going to be good, And
Yeah.
again, like I said, that's not always true, but it is kind of that, you want to make a good first impression on your viewers and potential clients. So,
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple of things that I want to talk about in relation
mhm,
to gear today. I want to talk about what makes a good microphone, right? And then the couple of good microphones that you could choose. And then I'll talk a little about some software you can use that we're using right now. And I'll see if I can turn it on and off while we're doing this live so you can see the difference that can even help make it sound like you're in a professional studio. Cause I'm not in a professional studio.
me
And,
either.
yeah, the both of us are in our bedrooms, right? And we've set
Hmm.
up a couple of things to make our spaces work for us so that we can show up in our marketplaces professionally and be able to show up our expertise and have it work that way. So, where should we go first? Should we go for gear? Should we go for the software stuff that goes with it? Or should we go for what makes a good microphone?
I would say maybe let's start with what makes a good microphone so that it's easier to understand why the microphones and software we're showing are good.
Yeah. So there's going to be a couple of different types of microphone that you're going to run into. So there's going to be the built-in microphones on your gear, right? So if you have an iPhone or you have a Samsung device, you have a laptop, they're going to have a microphone that's built into it. And for the most part, if we were talking like quality level, right, 100% being an expensive $400 or $500 mic and the inexpensive being the microphone that just comes on your device. If you have any device made by Samsung or Apple that is 2 years old or less, the microphone's probably going to be like 50% quality kind of thing, where depending on how good your space is, the microphone might be really good, right? If you have a nice sound dampened room, right, which means, it's carpet all around, you got the sound dampening things on the wall, and there's no air
Mhm.
conditioning and no background noise. The reality is, most of your audience would not know you were using the built in microphone, right? Now, that does have the caveats of you have to have a good room to be recording in.
Right. Give and take relationship
Yeah.
there with your microphone.
Yeah, and if you have in an older device, right, something that's 3, 4 years plus older, the inboard microphone is going to be obviously low quality when you record with it, right? And if
Mhm.
you do direct side-by-side comparisons, like my son has, like, my old iPhone 10 and I've got an iPhone 13, the sound quality difference between those 2 microphones is night and day, right? And then the same thing happens from the iPhone 13 to the iPhone 15, right? They've made dramatic improvements in microphones, and a lot of it is, I believe, the computational, like, stuff they do on the backside of all their operating systems to make it better. I can't speak so much for like the ones built into the Windows machines because I haven't used one in many years, but the same thing is true on the laptops, right? The
Mhm.
Apple laptops in the last year or two, their microphones are very good, right? Because the whole marketplace has moved to doing, Zoom calls and remote work. So they're very good if you're in a good room, right? And so you
Yes.
can get away with that if you can control the sound space that you're in. So that's the first type of microphone that you might run into and that you might use. What sort of your experience with some of the inbuilt microphones compared to the professional ones we'll talk about in a second?
I mean, like you said, there's a really big night and day difference between devices that are newer versus older. A lot of those older laptops and phones, going back to what I said, they sound crunchy and fried and just not very good, almost kind of a staticky noise for some reason.
Uh,
The newer ones are pretty good. For those of you that don't know, I have my own TikTok account. It has nothing to do with the actual podcast, but that, I do stuff on, and shockingly, the audio quality on my phone is surprisingly good. I mean, it was much better in our old house because it was a smaller room, which just means there's less acoustic echo. So that was probably a big contributor to it. But I have noticed that newer phones are pretty good. And if you set it up right, you're not going to really be able to tell a difference as, the average viewer between a professional microphone and a built in one.
And that's gonna have a lot to do with the room that you use it in and the sound space and whether or not you can control any of that. And you can't always control that, which is where having some of these other tools we're gonna talk about gives you a better output or better outcome. And so what I wanna mention there is, so your voice has a frequency range, right? And so if you look at your frequency range from like 0, I think it goes up to like 20 or 30,000 hertz that the human ear can hear. The human
Mhm.
voice has a peak around the middle of like where the actual voice lives. And then your microphone has a frequency curve that it is capable of hearing itself. And microphones are generally not as wide of a frequency range as your human ear is. Same kind of thing
Mhm.
happens with your eyeball, right? The eye can see more light steps than a camera can by almost
Right.
like a factor of 2 or 3, which is, because
Mhm.
we have really good built-in gear from
Yeah.
from
I
from
mean,
our
that's why if you try to record, like, LED sign, it'll look like it's flashing on the camera, but it's not flashing in your eyes. It's just the camera can't handle it. Or if you try to record a really high pitched noise, your microphone's just gonna pretend it doesn't exist.
can't hear, it doesn't have the same range that you do. And so you're gonna be
Mhm.
looking for a microphone that has the right range, right? So a lot of your built-in microphones, especially in the last couple of years, are gonna be tuned for a human voice, right?
Mhm.
And so because that's what they're being used for, they're being used for video conferences. So if you were trying to record like music, like video, like, acoustic guitar or piano, they're not gonna be tuned for that very well because it's different frequency ranges. So when you're looking for a microphone, the next sort of set of microphones that you're going to be looking at is going to be the type of microphones that you can add into your device, right? Something you can plug into your device and have a dramatic improvement over the built-in microphone. And so what's
Mhm.
really fascinating about that, the microphone that I'm using here, and we'll show this on screen in a minute, this is a Apogee Hype mic. This is about a $350 microphone, and it's designed specifically for voice and acoustics. And it has what's called a cardioid, I believe is the word for it. That's a fancy term. And I'm, audiophiles out there, please don't, fillet me for butchering that. But it's the way that it's picking up sound. And it's only going to pick up sound here, right? It's going to pick up sound in front of it. And it's not going to pick up sound that's behind it or off to the side or other things. So it makes for good directional, like it's going to hear me and it's not going to hear my kids up in the front room, right? It's not going to hear the 3D printer that's running in the background over here, as well as
Mhm.
it's going to hear what's right in front of it. And if I were to turn the microphone around, it wouldn't hear as well on the backside as it does on the front side because it's, it's directional. And you have mics like this that you plug in, and then you can have other mics like this, right? This is a wireless mic, same kind of thing, where instead of plugging the mic directly in, you plug in a receiver, right? So you plug the receiver in, and then you have the microphone that you use for it. And so you get a wireless one. And so those are sort of the two options outside of the built-in microphone, is to get something that you plug directly into your device, or you get a wireless option that you plug into your device. And you have different sort of flexibility and setup options that are useful for those. And like you mentioned before, these plug-in mics, almost anything on the market nowadays is going to be good enough to do what you want, right? If you go to
Mhm.
Amazon now and type in USB microphone, almost everything that's sold on the marketplace will work for what we're trying to accomplish here. And so the reality is, since almost everything will work, we can't just sit down and review all, 10,000 options you have for microphones. So we have a couple of what we call just best in class microphones that we recommend
Mhm.
because they're always fairly decent. So in the USB microphone category, generally speaking, if you're looking at anything that's in the $99 plus range, it's going to be good enough to do what you want to do, right? Anything below that, you are flipping the coin on whether or not it'll be good enough. Like I said, you lucked out, got a
Mhm.
pretty good
I
one.
got lucky. I'll admit, I mean, I know a little bit about audio and everything, but this was just because I just wanted to get into recording and didn't really care about the microphone quality, and I just got really lucky with it. That your experience may not be the same.
So this one here, the reason I like this mic, this is the Apogee Hype mic, and we'll put it up on the screen and show it to you in just a minute. So the Apogee Hype mic, actually mine's called the Mic 96K, but they replaced it with the Hype mic. So the Hype mic is the current one you could purchase. I like it because it's small, right? I'm see if I can lift it up here and you can actually see it in the camera. So I'll have to like move my face so you can still hear it, but it's really small, right? It's a little mic. It's smaller than my iPhone. And so there's a couple of things that are really useful about that. They sell it with both a USB interface, so I can plug it directly into the computer, and they sell it with a Lightning interface, so I can plug it directly into my phone, right? Or if you have one of the newer phones, the USB-C microphone, so you can plug it and you can actually use your camera, your phone camera, and dramatically increase the audio that comes out of the phone by using a
Yeah.
device like this. So it's very flexible for something like that. Other couple of things I like about this in a podcast environment like this, right? Where, we're doing they call this a 3/4 headshot, right? Where you can see our head and our shoulders and you have the microphone in the view. That microphone in the view there is a bit of, I don't even know what you want to call that. Like you look
For
like a
some reason,
podcaster, right? You look like
exactly.
someone
It just it
yeah,
yeah.
who's set up and
You
doing that
look like you do
work.
this kind of thing for a living, you know?
So
So
there's some of
you
that unconscious, like, yep, he's got a nice microphone. He sounds like he's got a microphone. He looks good on camera, that kind of stuff. So there's some benefit to just the view aspect of that. And there are people like one of our clients actually, he actually went and purchased one of the really nice Shure or Sennheiser mics that has like the whole boom arm and everything with the thing on it. And he was like, the only reason they purchased it because he was like, he already had a microphone like this, one of the simple ones. He was like,
Mhm.
we want that look and feel, right? That we look like professional podcasters. So they bought that. So there is something to be said for that. It's not necessary for the work that we're doing, but there is a little bit of, you got a nice microphone. It looks good on camera,
Mhm.
that one. So these USB microphones are really useful for all of that. So there's a couple of things that I like there. One, it looks good on camera. Two, you set it up and it's just there, right? It's on your desk, right? I have
Mhm.
mine on a little swing arm, right? And so you'll
Yep,
probably lose
me
my
too.
audio here, but like I
Like,
move it out of the way and I can swing it back, right? And so it's really easy for me to sit down and record, right? I don't have to
mhm.
worry about setting up a microphone or plugging in anything or, that's one of the things. The wireless microphones are really nice, but they have a little bit of setup, right? The setup is I have to plug in the thing, put it in the computer, put it on my shirt, right? There's a little bit of the setup that goes with that. You get some additional flexibility we'll talk about in a minute, but you have a little bit of that setup stuff. These USB microphones, you can just set up into your space. And again, if you recall back to our earlier podcasts on, your mini studio setup, one of our reasons why we talk about this is you want I call them your psychological barriers to action to be as low as possible, right? So
Mhm.
if you have your lights already set up, you have your camera already set up, you have your microphone already set up, you have your backdrop already set up in a space regularly for your recording, then it's really easy for you to just sit down and hit start record, right? And the easier it is for you to sit down and hit start record, the more likely you are to create content. And the more you create content, the more it's going to benefit your business. So does that all make sense?
Definitely, that was always a big thing for me, was the ease of setup, because that can be very daunting when you first start trying to record stuff. So, I mean, luckily with my studio now, pretty well, the only thing I have to set up is my backdrop, but that's just because I just push it to the side and then pull it out, and that's the extent of my setup.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I went and for people who've been watching this podcast since the beginning, I went full tilt crazy on my backdrop here. And I have a 3D printer and I custom 3D printed brackets and got a custom like curtain roller to roll it up. So I literally have a button that I push and it rolls the backdrop
it's
up and down.
awesome.
Right. It's for that very specific reason that the easier it is for me to set up my studio, the more likely I am to sit down and record. Right. The more likely I am to say, hey, Brandy, we should get on and record another
Mhm.
episode for our podcast today. Right. Because I know that I don't have those barriers of, let me set up my microphone, let me set up my lights, let me set up my camera, let me set up my backdrop and get it all ready, right? And, even if it only takes a couple of minutes, the more setup you have, the less likely you are to do the actions that are going to put, dollars in the bank account in the future for your business. So these USB microphones have that really big benefit of they're high quality, they're simple to set up, there's nothing you have to do to adjust on them. Like I think the most complex thing I have on this microphone is I have a little dial on the side. You were talking about that crunchy noise and clipping, right? I can turn it up. That's probably too loud, right? You probably hear my voice clipping there.
That's exactly what I mean by crunchy audio, by the
There you
way,
go.
for those that were still confused.
Yeah, so I have a little dial that I can turn my sound down to the right side. That's it. That's the only setup I have. And generally
Mhm.
speaking, I already have it set to the right spot, so I never have to touch it. And it's just ready to go. That's all there is to it. And so it makes my life really, really simple from a microphone standpoint. And here I am like trying to adjust it back because I'm trying to show it on.
I will say that is a big benefit of getting more expensive mic is you'll have more options like that because mine has no options. It just sits here and I just have to control my voice level
Yeah,
instead
and
of it being able to do it
you
for
can
me.
You can control that a little bit by your distance, right? You come a little bit
Mhm.
closer and you'll get a bit louder, a little bit further away. So you can control that with the boom arm. And so this just gives me the ability. And so this is here, I'll get super nerdy on people for you on audio stuff. So if we take this arm and we move it out, generally speaking, your microphone is going to pick up the best vocals the closer it is to your throat and your chest, right? And so the throat and chest area, that's where you're going to get more of the deep sort of radio voice from. And so while you can control the how your microphone is called peaking to get that crunchy audio, the more you can control your peaking by pulling the microphone away, the further you get away from the microphone, the less you'll be able to hear the bass in your voice, right? And so
Mhm.
you'll only hear the upper, the mid range, and the highs in your voice, and you'll sound less, I guess, radio-y. I don't know what the word is, right? Like,
Yeah. I mean, I would hope that, people understand what a radio voice is.
yeah, you get sort of that fuller sound to your voice. You want to get all of the range. You want to get the bass, the mid range, and the highs, that all the parts of your voice. Because when you hear someone in person, you're going to hear all of those things, and right, so you want to get as much of that as possible. And so there's two different things. If you talk into the microphone, whenever I say P and T and S and any of those things, you'll get plosives, right? That's what those are called, where
Mhm.
you'll peak the microphone. And so
Yep.
generally speaking, I tell people, hey, you want to put the microphone just below your face, get the voice in your throat like that. Your professionals who do this for a living who just do production, they'll tell you you want to get a plosive screen and then talk directly into the microphone. But for
Mhm.
most of our folks and the business owners we're talking about, the 80/20 version of that is just get it under your face here so your plosives are coming off the side of the microphone and you're still being able to get some
Mhm.
of that bass from
Yep.
your face there or from your chest and whatnot. And
I do have one of those screens, but this I don't know, this is gonna crunch the audio a little bit, but this comes off, so that's the microphone underneath. This can also I don't know what it's called, but it can also help with that sound. Doesn't peak, and it also drowns out background noise.
yeah, windsock, I believe is what they call those.
Yeah, so,
So
if a gust of wind were to blow through here, you probably wouldn't hear it as much. If my air conditioner was going off, you're not gonna hear it as much.
yeah, those are useful. And you notice I don't have any one of those on. So
Yes.
I don't use one of those.
Well,
So
my
that's your
microphone is not directional either.
oh yeah,
My
so yours is
microphone picks up the
omnidirectional.
same sound all the way around. So
Yeah.
I would assume that means it's more important for me to have one than it would be for you to have one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are you ready to amplify your influence and stand out from the noise? Join Richard Matthews on pbp.fm as he explores the power of podcasting, social media, and strategic content to boost your reach. You'll discover the latest trends in video, audio, and influencer marketing, plus unlock insider tips to create binge-worthy content spotlighting you as a leader. With upbeat energy and clear, empowering advice, Richard guides publishers, experts, and entrepreneurs on starting a podcast, improving social strategy, and connecting with your perfect audience. Visit pbp.fm and book a podcast strategy session to start spreading your message today.
So then the second option, other than your wired microphones like this, which if you can pick one up, these are really useful. Like I said, you can get these anywhere from 99 bucks to about 350 or so. You can get even all the way up to like the $500 USB microphone range. But generally speaking, my favorite, and maybe we should pull these up and just show people real quick. So let me go
Mhm.
share window and we'll share this one. There we go. This is the Elgato Wave 3 microphone. It's 150 bucks. You can pick it up on elgato.com and the link on our website on the pushbuttonpodcast.com/shop. This just takes you right to Elgato's website because we don't sell these. We just link to them so people can access them. This is a really good USB microphone from Elgato. And this nice thing about theirs is it ties into all of their other systems. So like both Brandy and I use their Stream Decks and we use their lights and we use their cameras actually. So the whole
Nice.
system ties together really nicely. So it's a good microphone for that as well. And you can control some of this stuff directly from like their little dials and whatnot on their Stream Deck. So if you're into that kind of stuff and into the sort of the geeky nerdery stuff, the Elgato one works really well. And then the one that I'm using, the other one that we've tested a lot, I've been using this microphone for years, is this Apogee Hype mic. This is a higher quality microphone and it does have that dial on it and it will connect to your iPhone. It will connect to your Samsung phone. It will connect to your laptop, whatever you want to do with it. And because of the way that it's tuned and the way that this microphone works, if you want to record vocals for music or you wanted to record music with it, it will handle all of that as well. Where this one is going to be mostly just a voice podcaster style mic it's only tuned for those voice frequencies. This is also a much larger microphone. So part of the thing that you're paying for with this Hype microphone is it's very small. Like you could literally just stick it in your pocket or stick it in your studio gear, whatever you're looking for. So those are the two USB microphones that we recommend for life. So let me go ahead and stop that screen share. So that's the first one. So the second one is your wireless microphones. And so your wireless microphones, there's several different companies that make these. So DJI makes them. This is the DJI mic. They're currently on like the version 2 of this. And then I believe Rode makes something called the Wireless Go. And there's a few other brands on Amazon that do these. If you're searching for them, you just look for wireless lavalier mic. And the benefit that you have with these is they're super flexible. You can do a lot of things with them that you can't do with the USB microphone because this needs to be attached to your desk somewhere, right? So a couple of things that are useful for a microphone set like this. If you and I were in studio in person, this
Mhm.
microphone is not going to be as useful for that situation, right? Because this microphone, we would need to like swing the arm back and forth between the two of us to hear both of us,
Right.
or we need to make sure we had two of these expensive microphones to be able to put one in front of you and one in front of me. So if you're in an
Mhm.
office where you're going to be, your co-host is with you in the same space, this may not be as useful of a setup. Or if you were going on location, we have some podcast companies that are, they're going to visit local businesses and they're talking to the person there. Or if they're recording with, say, your clients where you're going out and doing interviews and showing case studies of how your clients are doing, anything that's not in your regular location place, a wireless lavalier mic can be really useful. And then the other thing is, if you're going to put the money in and budget is a concern for that, and you think some of those are going to be opportunities, you can use this in studio as well, right? So you have the ability to use it in studio and then out of studio and do some other
Mhm.
things with it. So that extra flexibility is what you get by spending, this is a $350 mic for here. This one's also the $350 mic. So that same $350, you're going to get, the benefit of it's set up, it's in your studio, it's really easy to use. There's not as much setup with it with this microphone. And then with this microphone, that same $350 gets you that flexibility to do some other things with it. Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me.
Yeah. So the way that these ones work, you have a little, and each brand is a little bit different, but you have a USB plug, right, to plug it into your computer or to plug it into your phone or whatever. I think this one actually has, it's got a little a gizmo bobber, and you can pop off. I don't want the USB on there anymore. I want the iPhone one on there, and you just slide it in, and now I can plug it into my iPhone, right? And so this is called a receiver, and it receives the audio from the wireless microphones, and then you turn it on and you get two different microphones, which is one of the things that comes with flexibility, right? So I have the one I can put on my shirt, and we have the one we can put on your shirt, and we could both interview. And the way that works then is from an audio standpoint, one of these will be the left channel and one of these will be the right channel. So you have two audio channels for the microphone, which is really nice. One of the things that I really love about this particular microphone set from DJI is it has a little built-in, let's see if it'll show up on here, a backup record button. So
Mhm.
it'll record onto this microphone and it will send it to the wireless receiver. So, because you have wireless things involved and technology is what it is, right? We, over 40 years, we still haven't figured out how to get printers to print every time we hit print. Same thing's going to happen with any of your other technology,
Yep.
right? So anytime you
Oh,
have the
the old
opportunity
printer
for,
thing.
yeah, anytime you have the opportunity for a backup, this is really nice. So when you hit record on your computer, you also hit record on your two little microphone things, and you'll have the recording that went to the computer and then the backup recording on each mic, which is really nice, especially if you're doing, mission critical recordings or something that you really want to make sure you have the audio for.
Right.
So really useful there for that. And so when I'm using it in studio, which I do sometimes, and people who have watched my podcast have probably seen this before, it's just set up like that. And then, let me move my microphone out of the way. You don't really have a microphone obscuring your view, which I don't, you probably didn't hear that because I put the microphone off to the side, at least not well. But the setup is really simple and it's just plugged in, and you just select the microphone the same way you do anything else. It's plugged in, you select it, it works just like USB microphone. So very easy
Mhm.
for nowadays. And then my super secret ninja trick, Amazon sells little handles for these microphones, which I think is just genius. This one's not actually from Amazon. I have a 3D printer because I'm a super nerd, and my son and I
Nice.
printed these. So, but it's literally the same model as the one they sell on Amazon. And I'm pretty sure that even some of the ones on Amazon are 3D printed. But you just take the microphone and you stick it on a little thing like that. And now I have a microphone that I could do interview style stuff with out on the field. So it gives you a third option for what you can use these with if you pick up a little gizmo like that. So if you're looking for flexibility and you still want to have a good microphone quality, these ones are really great. If you are someone who watches YouTube a lot, you
Yes.
have probably seen a lot of creators with either this set of microphones or the Rode Wireless Go. If you see
Mhm.
the square is the Rode Wireless Go one. I assume you've probably seen that around a bit. Um,
Yes, definitely.
yeah. So these are really cool to have. And like I said, you don't need them. Most of what our clients are going to be working on is going to be in studio type stuff where they're doing face to camera like you and I are doing. This microphone
Mhm.
is going to be your better option, right? Something like that. But if you have some ideas on things you might want to do, this might be a good setup to purchase, right? We got at least one client who's going into the community regularly and interviewing local businesses and restaurants and politicians and other things on their podcast. They picked up this microphone for that option. So, do you have any other thoughts or anything, additions on why we might pick up a wireless one?
Not that I can really think of. The only thing that I might add is if you're going to do a wireless microphone, just that is one that you don't want to cheap out on. Just because I've noticed when I've tried them and they're cheaper ones, they'll tend to just disconnect randomly for no reason. And also, your cheaper ones don't have that backup recording usually. So,
Yeah.
whatever you did is just lost, and you're not even going to know that it was lost. I also would recommend getting something that has a receiver rather than like a Bluetooth microphone
Hmm.
because for whatever reason, Bluetooth makes audio crunchy a lot of the times.
It doesn't have as much bandwidth available.
Yes.
So, this has specifically tuned bandwidth for the audio that's coming through. So, the full receiver does take up a little bit more space, but it gives you a much better, cleaner feed. The other thing that's really important to note about switching to a microphone like this rather than a microphone like this is I want to note the size of the listening element, right? You can see the little silver piece there. That's the listening element on this device. And here's the listening element on this device, right? You actually can't see through it. There's a big circle in there. It's about 10 times the size of this one, right? And
Mhm.
so while this still has the capability of picking up all the same frequencies that this one does, I keep tapping it. So it's probably like our audio engineers are going to be like, what are you doing with these microphones on this go? The sound that's going to come out the backside of this one, you're going to get more of your fuller bass with a bigger
Mhm.
microphone, right? So you
Yes.
will get less of that radio sound that you might really want in your vocals with something like this than you will with something like this. So it's not really a detriment because these microphones are really good. But if you are sound testing them side by side, right? You record
Mhm.
something on this microphone, you record something on this microphone, you will notice the difference in how the lower part of your vocal range sounds on the smaller microphone. Same kind of thing when you go to like your iPhone or to the built-in microphones. They have those little pinhole mics, they're
Yes.
10 times smaller than these ones, right? And so the smaller the microphone hole, the less of those big wide bass vocals can make it into the microphone and be picked up by the microphone element. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think that's from a gear standpoint, those are all the things I really have to say about it. You have any other questions or things we should make sure people know if they're picking up a microphone for their podcast?
I can't think of anything else for the microphone wise other than, kind of segueing into software that can help
Yeah.
even more on top of your gear.
So the software, so there's two parts to the software. So the software initially is software you can use while you're recording, right? And this is the stuff that's gotten really good with AI over the last couple of years. And I mentioned the reason why like the iPhone or the Mac have started to have like their little bitty microphones can sound pretty decent is because they're putting a lot of computational effort behind the microphone, right? Where the computer is compensating for all of the problems with physics that come with using a small microphone, right? And so they'll
Mhm.
use like 3 or 4 or 5 microphone element arrays and then a really powerful processor and some really smart computational stuff to make it sound like you have a bigger, better microphone than you do, right? And so that's what's happening why the built-in microphones can sound all right. But you can take that same sort of technology and apply it to a really nice microphone and get some other cool things that can happen with it. So the one that we use, I actually pay for this for myself because I do a lot of podcasting things, is we use something called Crisp.ai, and that's KRISP.ai. And it
Mhm.
cost me, I think, a whopping $4 per year. And $4 per
Might be a
year,
little too steep.
yeah, I mean, it is really hard to swallow that pill for that kind of money. But what it does is it live listens to your voice and all of the background information that's happening that your microphone might be picking up, right? And the better microphone you have, the less work Crisp has to do to fix this, right? But it'll pull out just your voice and take everything down. So what you probably can't hear right now is I have 8 children in my house. They're all playing video games up front. My air conditioner is on. It's blowing right on top of me because it's 107 degrees in Florida all the time. Right, it's actually not. I think it's only like 92 right now, but it feels like it's
Feels like
107.
107.
And I've got a washer and dryer that are next to me. We got a 3D printer that's going. There's a lot of things that are happening that you probably can't hear, despite the fact that the microphone probably can hear those things. And that's because Crisp is picking them up. So let me see if I can do this live on here. We'll see if it'll let me do this. I should be able to turn off the noise cancellation. So let's see how this works. Now can you hear the air conditioner, for instance? Right?
Yeah, I can hear it a little bit.
So you probably hear the air conditioner a little bit. And if I were to switch to the inbuilt microphone on the laptop, you'd be able to hear a lot more of it because it's a more omnidirectional mic like yours is, where this is more of a
Mhm.
directional mic. But you can turn the noise cancellation on and off, and it will clean up the sound of the voice. So I turned it back on just now, and you should probably hear just my voice again, right? And so it's a really simple way to, when you have less control over your environment, like I do, right? We got kids, we're traveling in an RV, we've got a small studio space that I can't put soundproofing and stuff up in. A software addition to your microphone, like Crisp, can really enhance the sound quality that you're playing with. And so, on the side note on that, it does, I don't know what the word would be. You have less audio data available later because it's pre-processing some of it. And so, I don't know what I'm trying to say. If you have control over your space, it is better not to use noise cancellation than it is to use noise cancellation, because you will end
Right.
up with I think that word would be like a thinner audio file, right? There's just less
Yeah.
data in it because it's pulling out any of the things that it thinks aren't relevant to your voice. And it could
Right.
be wrong, right? It's pretty good, but it could be wrong, right? Everyone's played with ChatGPT and watched it hallucinate. Same technology
Mhm.
powering this, except it's being applied to audio. And it can be hallucinating about what it thinks is or is not your voice. And because of the way we're recording, we're pre processing it before it even hits the recording. That data just doesn't exist anymore. So you have a
Mhm.
thinner audio file than, say, you do, who's not currently using Crisp, right?
Right.
But you also have more control over your space, and you probably don't have 8 children running around in your house.
No, we only have one, and she's pretty good about, doing her thing while we're, in the middle of recording or
Yeah.
meetings.
Yeah, while you're recording and whatnot. So if you don't have as much control over your audio sound space, Crisp as a software addition to your microphone can be really potent. And you can see here, like I said, our goal is not Hollywood quality. So I don't particularly care that we have a little bit thinner audio file, right? What I care about is that my message is not missed by my market because of my audio quality. And you can tell here just by watching and listening to us that you don't have that experience, right? My sound comes through clean and clear. And it's good enough to do what we're trying to do here. So that's Crisp. That's the first one. The second side of that is your post processing recording, right? So if you don't have something like Crisp going while you're recording, then the other side of that is you can do some post processing on it when you're done with the audio, where you can do the same type of AI powered noise cancellation after the fact, right? And then
Mhm.
you have access to all of the data that your microphone recorded, so you can make sure that anything that it's hallucinating about or not is all there. So if you're on an interview like you and I are, when I'm doing with a guest like that, I'll always use Crisp. But sometimes if we're doing something internally and I really care how good the audio quality is going to be, and I'm going to make sure my video editors want the full thing, I won't use Crisp
Mhm.
and I'll just record directly into the thing and I'll be like, hey, this one the audio hasn't been processed on this. So they know
Right.
they need to go through and do some of the audio processing. One of the tools that we use internally, I know you played all around with this a lot. We use something called Descript. Descript is a really
Yes.
powerful podcast editing, video editing platform. And they have a really nifty little AI tool called Studio Sound that does a lot of the same things that Crisp is doing pre-processing. It just allows it to do post-processing, and it'll pull out just your voice, just your other things. Have you played with that much?
A little bit. I haven't messed with it too terribly much, considering, I wasn't doing a lot of the video editing side of things. I was doing more of the writing. But yeah, I mean, I've messed with it a couple times and it works pretty well. And I think the best thing about it, like you said, since it's post processing, you can hit the undo button if it decides to just take away a whole section of you talking.
Yeah, it's useful because you have a couple of different things. You have the undo button, and you also have like a dial, like how strong do you want
Hmm.
the effect to be? And then you can also like pop it open, and then it's got a few different like levels for different things that it's adjusting. And so it's all AI powered, but because it's post processing and not pre processing, you can control some of those dials to really dial in what it's doing. And you don't have to be a professional audio engineer to know what any of those things mean, because it's all AI driven. The AI knows what to do with it. And you can just, by ear be like, oh, this sounds a little bit better. It sounds pretty good
Hmm.
at 80%, or it sounds pretty good at 60%. Just let the computer do its thing. So tools like that, almost every video editing tool is going to have something similar. They probably won't all call them Studio Sound, because Studio Sound is, Descript's trademark name for it, but everyone tries to trademark their own names for it. But it's basically just AI post processing of your audio. So whatever,
Hmm.
if you're using Final Cut or DaVinci or, CapCut or Descript or whatever the tool is, they'll all have some sort of audio processing checkbox that is essentially the same AI processing tools that Crisp is using or that Descript is using, just in
Hmm.
their own software. So it's all very common nowadays to have that. And you'll want to, one way or the other, unless you have full control of your sound space, use some sort of
Yes.
audio processing along with your microphone to get that nice high quality audio. So good news for our
Very
clients.
important.
We do all of that for you if you send us your video files. So we'll actually run all of that on them. That's basically it for stuff. I guess if we were to recap all of this, we've got, why do you want to do it? right? If you don't want your message to be missed by your market because your audio sucks, right? That's that unconscious trust signals. You got
Mhm.
either your USB microphones or your wireless microphones. Anything in that $100 plus range is probably going to be good for you. Your USB microphones have the benefit of being set up in your space. They have a nice, good full range. They're really easy to use. And the wireless microphones have that flexibility of being able to do other things with them. And of course, the software stuff that we just talked about. Is there anything we missed when it comes to using a podcast for B2B and, building that knowledge? What's the word that I'm looking for?
Not too much that I can think about. I think the only thing that I would mention is if you're doing like an interview style podcast like this, I'd highly recommend making sure to keep your microphone very far away from your speakers.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, you'll create a feedback loop, and that's what produces that really high pitched,
That
annoying
squeaky
sound.
that squeak noise.
Yeah, like just when we hopped on earlier, I accidentally had my computer volume very loud and didn't realize it. And I think you even noticed that there was a lot of echo because my speakers were too loud and my microphone was picking it up.
Yeah, and then a
So,
lot of
not
your
use headphones.
yeah, as your other option would be to use headphones, and then a lot of your software will have what they call echo cancellation nowadays. So like
Yes.
Zoom or Crisp, or we're recording here in a software called Squadcast, and that's what we do with all of our clients. We actually give Squadcast to all of our clients. It has an echo cancellation feature, which will actually it hears your voice in the microphone, and then in the output of the speakers, it just cuts it out of the output of the speaker, so you don't get that feedback loop. And that's just more modern day AI technology being applied. So you don't have to wear headphones if you don't want to. Because you have this really cool hairdo. I don't have a cool hairdo, but you do, right? But those big
Yeah, where the
microphones,
headphones, it would just squish
just
it.
mess it all up. It squish it all up. So the echo cancellation and making sure your microphone, that's one of the things that's nice, right? Your microphone's more omnidirectional. Mine's not as
Yes.
directional, right? So, or mine is unidirectional, I guess. So my speakers are over here. So because they're behind the microphone, it's not going to pick it up as well as if I had an omnidirectional microphone. So
Mhm.
that's another useful thing for picking up a directional mic like this one.
Yes, because mine is going to pick up, my speaker that's over there just as well as it'll pick up my voice.
Yeah.
So,
Which there are benefits to that kind of microphone. If you are in a group setting where you have
mhm,
maybe 2 or 3 or a panel or something like that, you can just have one microphone you put in the middle of everyone and it'll pick up everyone's voice. That's generally what those
yes.
are for. Or if you're recording for a choir or something like that, have you ever seen those microphones at church that they drop down over the people? That's what those
Mhm,
omnidirectional mics are for. It's going to pick up everyone, right? And so that's probably what the intention of a microphone like that is. But you can see, obviously, it'll work for a podcast as well. It's just
mhm,
you have to be a little bit more thoughtful about your placement and your speakers and then that kind of stuff
yes.
when you're using it. So,
All right. Well, I don't have anything else. Do you?
no, I think we're good. So that's our first video in our frequently asked question series. We have a whole set of these, so we're probably going to come back and record several more on our frequently asked questions. I think some of our other ones just coming down the line for people is what kind of camera should I use? We'll probably talk a little bit about like KPIs. It's really important in the business space. Those are key performance indicators. Like what are the
Mhm,
KPIs that we care about for our podcast to know whether or not it's successful? We'll talk a little bit about things like how do I make my podcast get more views? We'll talk a little bit about how to launch your podcast. These are all frequently asked questions we get. And so if you're paying attention to the series, we just sort of finished up the 10 commandments of podcasting with both Brandy and a few of our other co-hosts that we've had. There I go hitting the microphone again. So what problems with talking with your hands, hit the microphone. So we'll have this frequently asked question series we're going to go through. And if you are listening to this and you have a question, just hit us up on our contact form on pushbuttonpodcast.com and we can make sure we get your questions answered as well. And obviously we're doing these in depth, right? As much as we can, answering these questions, really making sure the people who are wanting to use podcasting in their business know what they need to know. So again, Brandy, thank you so much for coming on and
well,
interviewing
thank you.
doing this.
I had a good time. I like talking about audio. So, like you said, make sure to, if you're interested in the rest of our frequently asked questions, to tune in for our next episode and we'll be back.
Thank you very much, Brandy. Thanks for joining us this week on pbp.fm. Make sure to visit our website, pbp.fm, where you can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or via RSS so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, if you found value in the show, we'd appreciate a rating on Apple Podcasts. Or if you'd simply tell a friend about the show, that would help us out too. And if you'd like to get help building an omnipresent content marketing strategy with a podcast and you want help, you might want to book a podcast strategy session with us at pbp.fm. Just click the Book a Strategy Session button and book a time on our calendar. We look forward to speaking with you. And be sure to tune in next week for our next episode.